Welcome to MLR Kickoff. We have an absolute bumper show lined up for you today. We will welcome in an LA Giltinis theme, and why not? The champs are here. The champs are here. Will they go back-to-back is a big question. We'll talk to their GM, Adam Freier, and also get in one of the stalwarts of Major League Rugby, who was picked up in the expansion draft by LA last year. New dad as well. I'm sure we'll dive into that. Luke White, former Glendale Raptor. Now LA Giltini comes back for his second year as well. But as always, it would be remiss of me if I don't welcome in my handsome, intelligent, well-spoken co-host, the Professor, Pete Steinberg. Pete, and you are finally home. We've got you at home.
Finally home. Yep, finally home. I think that maybe 3 weeks on the road. A little crazy. Thought I was going to spend February at home, but got a couple of clients who want me to take some trips. So we'll probably have a few more, but very happy to be home. We're expecting 8 to 12 inches of snow tonight, Dan. So fingers crossed. You missed that?
The shovel's ready. No, I think we're actually getting quite a bit of snow. It's snowing right now in Kansas. So
the difference is we have the nice dry snow that's actually pretty easy to shovel, right? You get the wet stuff, but you can make better snowmen. You can't make snowmen in Colorado.
That is true. Right. You cannot. It won't stay together. Snowball fights,
stay together.
The more velocity you throw, the less chance of staying together. It's a total nightmare. But anyway, I digress. We've got a big Giltinis themed show coming up. Let me ask you this real quickly. They went into last season deservedly favourites. You looked at their roster; it was pretty star-studded. There is a little bit of thought going around in the chat rooms and the general public. They're actually stronger this year than they were last year. What do you think, Professor?
I think I agree. I think they are stronger, but I think, we think about the Giltinis last year, Dan, and we think about their start, right, where they were scoring 40 points regularly for, I think, the first 5 games until they came across New York. And, we thought they were going to blow everyone away. But as the season went on, people adjusted. I mean, we'll hear a little bit about, what they did from both of our guests today that might have helped them have that start. So they were ahead of the crowd. Obviously, they're a great team and great champions, but it wasn't as easy as those first 5 or 6 games suggested. So I think they're better, but I also think there are other teams in the league that are better too.
Yeah, I agree. Well, one of the men charged with building the roster that was last year, and again this year, was their GM, Adam Freier. Pete, you and I had a chance to sit down with him early today. So let's get him into the show right now. Adam Freier from the LA Giltinis. All right, joining us now, LA Giltinis GM Adam Freier. And the burning question to get us kicked off, Haas, what's harder in the off-season, player off-season or GM off-season?
Oh, I would 100% say GM off-season. And a lot of people ask me about last year and being hard. Second year is twice as hard.
I was going to say, is there such a thing as an off-season for a GM?
Well, no, not really. And I don't want to disrespect the season, but a lot of us would say it's actually easier during season because you roll out your plan and, that's the fun bit. It's the off season. And I think we'll talk about 2021, but for 2022, the lead up on that, the complications with visas, the shortened turnaround, a lot of people don't realise is that our season is starting a lot earlier. There's challenges, but also, it's part of the magic of being a GM, and I enjoy it. I love it, and to put the team together last year and to see it grow this year is brilliant, and I just cannot wait for this week because that's the fun stuff.
Absolutely. Well, mate, firstly, we appreciate you joining us on the MLR Kickoff. We know you're a big fan of the show, and we keep you running up and down those stairs at the Coliseum week in, week out during the season. Let's talk a little bit of history first. Let's go backwards before we look forward. An amazing first season for LA. You cap it off with a championship win against Atlanta. But even further back than that, you've got a successful career playing. You go into the media and doing some journalism work down in Melbourne with the Rebels and with the paper down there. Things seem to be on cruise control in Australia. What's the domino that falls in Adam Freier's life that says, hey, let's pack up the family, let's go to LA, let's start a rugby franchise in America?
Well, that's it, right? The way you asked that question is my answer. And it all happened by accident, really. I came to LA for my 40th in March 2020 to run the marathon, the LA marathon. And I quarantined a bit of money to have a 40th birthday party, and I spoke to my wife and I said, look, I don't know if I want to do that. Let's take the kids to Disneyland, and I want to run the marathon. And I ended up doing that, and just by coincidence, not really, the LA Sevens was on as well. So I went out there and sort of timed this to perfection and going to the LA Sevens, and I bumped into a guy out there that had dealings with LA, asked me, how's life? And I said, I'm working at Rugby Australia. I've been at Rugby Australia for many years, and I worked within Rugby Australia as a player, executive, and all sorts of roles for about 20 years. And simply said that. And then the next morning, I'm having coffee in Venice Beach. And then 2 weeks later, the opportunity came up, and I'm having a Zoom call with GILLY. And somewhat the rest is history. But it isn't a hard sell, Dan, and you all know that. And being an Australian on this podcast, you understand it. Is coming into this country, it's incredible, and everyone talks about it around the world, not just in Australia. Is that US rugby? It's not a sleeping giant. It's a giant that's just been woken up. And I firmly believe there's a 10-year runway, and LA can play a part and be a part of that. Whether it's on, and you guys know it too, doing media, whether it's on a podcast or whether you're a fan or whether you're running a team or playing in a team. You want to be part of that journey, and it really has. It started 5 years ago, and the foundation owners have done an incredible job to build those foundations. But now, I've been very fortunate to come into a league that's somewhat about to thrive, where it's probably been surviving and now converting into thriving. And easy sell, but it was done by accident. I was over here to run, not to change roles or to have a life-changing experience. And now I'm part of a rugby team that's pink and blue, and very proud of that.
Well, Adam, it's Adam Gilchrist is a bit of a myth, right? A legend. So can you talk a little bit about what it's like to work for GILLY?
Oh, look, I think every GM or president or CEO that would come on the show, they all work with some pretty flamboyant and owners that that are different. And look, my first dealings with GILLY was back, I think, in 1998, where I was drafted into an Australian Institute of Sport camp as a 16 or 17-year-old. And I think he was under 20s, but back then, if you were identified at school, you were brought into the same bucket as an under 21s player. And he was in the under 21s, and I think I was in schools. And I remember seeing him in camp. He was an incredible footballer, by the way, and always remembered he had really big calves, and he was a real nugget. And he ultimately was called Nugget in those days when he was a footballer, but he was a player on the rise. So that was my first encounter with him. And then, watching him play Colts, and he was a schoolboy hero. I think he still holds records in GPS around his ability as a schoolboy player. Like, he could have been anything. Then obviously followed him through his professional career outside of that with F45, and then sort of connected back into him just recently. But it is funny that we both sort of started in that same camp in Canberra, Australian Institute of Sport, and he's gone on and done some pretty amazing things and sort of went down a different path. And now we find that we're working together. But a lot of people ask me how it is to work with him, but the best for me to work with any owner or any boss is someone who is brave enough to take risks, who is very, very passionate about rugby as a sport, but he's also very passionate about participation, growth, and seeing USA Rugby thrive. And I think that formula with someone who demonstrates a lot of innovation, who's bold and wants to make those sort of tough calls and decisions, it's brilliant. I learn every day. And the way in which he's sort of brought this club to life, it's a credit to him. And a lot of the sort of good fortune from us has come from his bravery. But yeah, he's a colourful character, and we wouldn't want it any other way. And you've got to be like that if you're going to grow a sport like rugby union in the US. You can't just roll out what the Kings or the Dodgers are doing. You have to be brave, and you have to make some big calls and do things differently, like he did in the fitness industry of turning a personal trainer into a LCD screen. So I really enjoy working with him, and I really appreciate the support and the people he's put around me to do this job.
So GILLY asked you to step in with the Loyals, as it was back then, soon to be the Giltinis. Can you talk about you talked about how this off-season is short, but can you talk about some of the things that you had to get through getting into the 2021 season in the middle of a pandemic?
Yeah. And no, if I had signed up, I think I signed up in May in 2020. So by signing in May, you never would have thought, and that was sort of just when the pandemic was sort of just to ripen up, and it wasn't there in Australia. But if you'd told me what was going to transpire in May the following year, I would have fallen off my chair. But setting up a new team, and I call this, and I get a bit. Some people don't like this, but I personally think LA is the sporting capital of the world, where it's got 2 women's soccer teams, 2 men's soccer teams, 2 an NBA women's team, 2 NBA teams. You go through it, but it's double and everything. And you're trying to set up a new sport, that is rugby, in LA, which was the COVID capital of the world at the time, during the height of a pandemic. And really, I flew out of December. I landed in a little sleepy town called El Segundo on a park bench. I remember it clearly. I ordered a Rinaldi sandwich, which is a famous sandwich shop. I sat at the bench. I met with my first staff appointment in a guy called Mitch Huberman, who's worked in LA Sport for many years. And we sat there and said, well, where's our office going to be? This was in December 29. Where's our office going to be? How are we going to get this stadium agreement sorted? All during a pandemic on I think it was 3 months till kickoff. And that was the easy bit. We had to work out where we could play because you weren't allowed to train in LA due to LA County protocol during COVID. And I sincerely think the support, and not a lot of it was just my call and doing. Like, I was very lucky to have Stephen Hoyles, who was pretty bold and brave back then, and Darren Coleman as the coaches, to put me through sort of, we went through every situation. And funny enough, the only part of the country which had relaxed its COVID rules was in Maui, in Hawaii, and we found an old polo field. We mowed it. It was up the top of the mountains, and it was actually cheaper for us to live in Maui than it was to live in LA. And if anyone lives in South Bay LA, they know how expensive it is. But it's all by accident. And from there, and I can remember seeing the things come through on social media, and people were saying, oh, it's all part of their strategy and building camaraderie and culture. Like, we had 5 people in a bedroom, and it worked. So we were pretty brave back then. But as I say, it all started with a really big, greasy sandwich in El Segundo. And we're very fortunate. And I sincerely mean this. And Darren Coleman at the time said it in a Zoom meeting. We used to Zoom a lot, to the point where it was becoming quite painful to keep hearing DC's voice. But he said, the team that manages the pandemic and COVID the best will win the tournament. And I believe we did that. And it was somewhat by accident, but in the end, we were brave and took risks, and we had the support of the owner to do it. But you would never have thought that we were, dodging horse shit on a paddock in Maui that was freshly mowed. And that's where we started. And then we ended up just looking at some of the pics there. And I know this is a podcast, but looking at some of those pics in the carpet of the Coliseum at the end of the day, it's just, I'm a big believer in these sorts of spiritual things of where you start and where you end. And, if you look at that turf and you look at what we started on, it's a pretty beautiful thing. And to be the best thing about it was no complaint from the players. And I know it was Maui, but still it was pretty tough going. They all stood around and they all bought into it, and they all had trust in the coaches and the staff that were going to put their best or their safety first and put them in the best position to train and be together. And somehow we pulled it off.
Talk a little bit about the challenges you faced coming into not only a new league, a new team, but a new country for you, for DC, for Hoylesy, for a lot of the players as well coming over. Was there a couple of aha moments when the American sports culture kind of got you and you're like, what's going on here? And then, hey, we'll help you. We'll get you through this.
Every day. And I'm still finding those things, Dan. And no disrespect to this incredible country that is the US of A. My family were over here. You probably could hear them in the background right now, so my apologies. But we, every day there's challenges. But I think the thing that was the hardest thing for me is I'm coming from a country like Australia where rugby is seen to be, one of the major sports. And here, we're not there yet. So, you walk into a room and the cell is different. The cell is different. You try to explain the sport. The amount of people say, "Oh, you're that footy code that without pads. You guys are crazy." There are always challenges and things are different, but you quickly adapt. And I think a lot of people talk up the amount of foreigners that we had that did very well for us last year, and they will do again this year as well. But I thought our local players, our players that were from here and a lot from Colorado as well. Now, they helped us out a lot. So all those questions and things, we definitely got the answers from them. But there's challenges every day. But I think just being part of a city like LA, and I sort of spoke about it at the top of the call, is very, very cluttered market. But it is just so big. And we know who our audiences are. We just got to get them out to the Coliseum. And, we were able to sort of get that awareness by being the first ever sports team to play at SoFi Stadium, by, breaking the record in the final for the Coliseum this year. So it's coming, but our biggest challenge is to be patient, because I think we're a few years off for having our internal goal is 25 by 25. That's 25,000, which is the whole lower bowl of Coliseum, and we want to see that full.
Yeah, well, the kids are in the background, so I'm going to segue over to the family. You talk about being a risk taker, everyone in the organisation taking risks, but your wife and your kids obviously a huge risk as well. How are they enjoying the American experience?
Yeah, we live in South Bay, and look, the best thing about this country, and I keep saying this, is they're just so warm and so welcoming. And I'm not saying Australians aren't, but it's just so in their nature to be very accommodating. And I've met some new friends here that I feel like I've known for 20 years. Kids love it. My youngest has got a bit of a tang in her accent, where instead of saying banana, she says banana. But we love that. But we are very fortunate. We live in a great city. To be fair, but and everyone that comes on this show that's a foreigner, right? And we are so grateful to be part of the MLR family. There's no question about it. And you hear Git's reason, Matt GITEAU that is, for his coming back to MLR. It was based around his wife and his partner, and he's always travelled around the world, and it's been his decision, and he made it up to her. So we do take that for granted, not just as footballers, but anyone that's coming and joining the MLR. You do take it for granted. You take it for granted that you're going and making these big decisions, but they're always coming with you. And I've got nothing but praise for my family, and I know that everyone at our club, including our head coach, the club is built on foundations that are set upon that Gilly's done and the footy program we put in. But we're very, very passionate about ensuring our partners are happy as well, and they come and use our gym. And we, one of the best comments I heard was after the final, where one of the kids was crying because he got champagne in his eyes, right? So, and sitting there and listening to that and hearing him complaining he's got champagne in his eyes, that just shows you how close the wives and partners were within our celebration of winning that trophy. And I know that there was some MLR staff in there, but the wives and the partners, everyone has to be a part of it. And if they're not part of it, we're not doing our job.
So let's talk about last year. Obviously ended well. What was one of the things that surprised you most about the LA Giltinis? What's one of the things that you were like, man, I didn't think that we were going to do that as well as we did?
Yeah. Look, a lot of the things you could say was part of our strategy. I was, and I said at the top of the call, I was really pleasantly surprised with our local talent. And the appetite for rugby in this city is there. And it's just trying to get them to the football and get them united. And I was speaking to Todd Clever today, who works with us. If rugby can unite itself, whether it's from a governing body level, and it's very united at an MLR level, and if they can get that bit right, where clubs are aligned and everyone's sort of pushing or rowing in the same direction and pushing in the same way, American rugby is going to do some great things. But my biggest surprise really was, the success of the Giltinis as a brand. And it's the elephant in the room when I do any podcast or any interview. They keep saying, how are you called the Giltinis? And give us a bit of insight in why you're a cocktail. And Giltinous. I was speaking to a journalist the other day, and he kept saying the Giltinous, and I said, look, man, I've just got to pull you up there. It's Giltini. So I was surprised by the end of it, and we got a pretty rough time at the start, but that sort of started to work. And that's probably the biggest surprise, I think, Pete, was you've got Red Bull racing, where if you go to Formula One, you see fans going ballistic with blue flags with an energy drink on it. You go to Japan and the Suntory, Goliath, who are known, that's one of the biggest rugby brands in the world. So it's there, and I was very nervous about it, but I'm a big believer in it. The drink is going to launch at our first home game. You heard it here first. And the success of that and Gillies and the brands around it, and that's the formula, because we've got to start to do things differently. There is no broadcast revenue yet, and it will come, but you've got to build brands within your team and in your sport. And the front row of the GILLY goons, and then we started to see people in tie-dye, then we started to see people rocking the new era hats, and the brand started to work. And if you're going to say anything about a surprise, and it was over-delivered on what I expected, the brand did. And I'm a marketer by trade, and that's what my background is, and I'm all about brand. Running a rugby team's easy. It's about building your brand, and for us to build a cocktail glass emblem that represents this city and rugby, I didn't think it would take. I think it will take some time, but I think they've done a pretty good job today.
All right, last one I'll leave you with. I'll let you get back to the family. Battle of the beverages. It's a big one. GILLY has 2 teams. What's your relationship like with your counterparts over at the Gilgronis? I won't tell you what Sam and Gerardo had to say about you. I'll let you speak and then I'll fill you in. But what's that relationship like? Is it the backyard brotherly love thing where you want to bash them a little bit harder than the other teams, or how has that been? How has it been treading those waters with the same owner?
Are you going to tell me the answer first, or are you going to tell me after I say my answer?
After, because I feel like you'll change direction. I just want the truth, man. Tom Cruise.
It's easier when I've played, we played rep footy with Mark Gerard, and Sam and I played schoolboy football together, and 19s and 20s, and went through the ranks together. And I think when I was captain, he was vice, so we're very close. Our kids are sort of the same age. And that's the magic of rugby, where you can come over and you both set up. And, we had a moment, we hung out a couple of weeks ago, and we're both sort of sitting there and saying, well, can you believe this has happened, that we're both sitting here together? But I'm very close with Mike Sheen. We actually ran the last marathon together. And I kept telling everyone I'm running the marathon with my dad, which he didn't like. It was in orange and I was in blue. And I don't think you've ever seen a Dumb and Dumber where they rock up to the ball in the blue and the orange. Yeah, that's what it looked like. But we've got a great relationship, and you're right. And that's no disrespecting to Austin. We want to beat as many teams as possible next year. And to their credit, and I think just by closing, Dan, I'd say is that I think everyone won something last year. We won the title, fortunately, and we had all luck on our side. But if you think about Austin, if there was a title for game day experience, they won it. And if you look at someone like New Orleans for youth and development and how they're building their academy and their depth, they won it. And then you go through innovation. New England are far and away doing some incredible things, and then you start to go through all the teams. Toronto deserve a medal just for being in the competition. They won the Spirit of Rugby Award without a doubt. So I think if I look around the league and in Austin, they do a great game day show. Their content's incredible. Got nothing but respect for them as an organisation. But again, like every other team, I think they're a winner in everything. And our internal goal here is, if there's an all MLR team, we want to have everyone in a staff point of view. We want to have everyone in that position. And also the benchmark. But I do think the league and all their owners should be congratulated and applauded that everyone's winning something. And I know that sounds a bit corny and cliche coming from the team that won it, but I think MLR's got a big future because all the owners are very aspirational and they're all winning in different areas. It's just about making sure we all pull it together.
Well, Haas, I appreciate you coming on the show. I appreciate you investing your years of experience and time into American rugby and to MLR in particular. We are stronger with you here and working in that direction. Go spend some time with the family, and hopefully big win this weekend against Houston, down in Houston, right?
Yeah. And we had trouble there last time. They got some great talent coming through the USA Sevens, and there's one player that we'll be looking out for, in Nick Boyer, who was incredible against us last time. They're a very good team, very well run. And we're looking forward to it. Hopefully it's a close game for our fans.
Perfect. And we'll catch up with you during the year. Excited for another strong effort and another strong season from the LA. How'd you say it again? The Giltinis? The Giltinis.
I was about to say, no worries, Dave Power and Paul Steinberg. So, and thanks so much. And as I say, I really do enjoy the show. Keep up the great work. Love all your support for rugby in this country. Sincerely do.
Well, appreciate you coming on.
There you go, Adam Freier, GM for the LA Giltinis. I know that you and I, were at the championship, and actually, I think you left me at this point. But the morning of the game, we got there, and there was someone running up and down the Coliseum, and I'm like, who is that rando? Thinking maybe it's like someone on the football coaching staff at USC or something. No, it was Adam Freier getting in his fitness before the game. And that's that driven personality that you almost
Right.
need to launch a new franchise in, like you call it, the biggest sporting market in the world, which is a big claim. It's not unfounded. It's LA is a really strong sports market, and they're facing a lot of competition for eyeballs and wallets out there. And you need a guy like that to kind of drive the ship. I'm a big fan. I'm a big Adam Freier fan, just as a human being, and think what he was able to do with that team year one. Just your thoughts on it, Pete, because I think the pressure of being favourites is sometimes more crippling than trying to keep up with the favourites.
I think that's right. But I think what we heard from Adam, which I think is healthy, right, is that they're not, last year wasn't the only year. I mean, you looked at who they brought in and you're like, oh, they really just want to win this year? And they're like, no. We have a plan. Like, I love their 25 and 25, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 25,000 people for a game in 25. Like, things like that, when you hear those aspirational goals by teams, and especially teams that do well on the field, I mean, you don't get 25,000 people to a team that's not winning, right? So you have to win to get those crowds. But I love it. Like, these guys aren't in it for this. Last year wasn't, we're putting all our eggs in that basket. They're not putting all their eggs in this basket. They are building something that they think can really have value. And 25 and 25 is the start. But, there's that 10-year goal of the World Cup being here and the opportunity that has to really accelerate the growth of rugby. And it's great to hear people like Adam and the Giltini organization kind of really talk in those terms about the growth of the game in the US.
Absolutely. And LA Rams fan, when the Bengals beat you next Sunday, you can pick up a new sport and come out to the Coliseum and watch rugby.
I don't know that's a way to get the LA fans on board to rugby, Dan. I don't think that's the way to do it.
If you didn't keep up on the numbers, there actually weren't any LA fans at the Rams game on the weekend. They're all 49ers fans. I think it was a 75-25 split from San Francisco fans. It was almost an entirely red stadium. And they still won, though. Rams, Bengals. We'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. We'll digress. Let's talk now about our very own Herculean monster of a man, Luke White. You got a chance to catch up with Whitey, and you've known Whitey for a long time. He was one of the nicest, most personable guys. You couldn't find a nicer guy than Luke White. On the field, the total opposite. He just inflicts damage with and without the ball. Is he softening in his old age? There's only one way to find out. We will see when Pete Steinberg sits down one-on-one with Luke White.
Luke, thanks for joining us on MLR Kickoff.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Now, you are one of the original Major League Rugby players here in the first year with the Glendale Raptors, as they were back then. But tell us a little bit about what brought you to the States from Australia and how you made that decision.
I had just suffered an injury, and I'd been out for a season with a broken leg. And I was looking for just a new opportunity overseas to get back into rugby and getting fit. And I had a mate of mine, his name is Tom Coolican, who's a former US Eagle, who's an Australian buddy of mine. And he said, have you thought about ever going to the States to play? And I said, no, what? Rugby in America? What are you talking about? And he said, go online and look up this place called the Glendale Raptors at Infinity Park. Anyway, I said, righto. I looked it up and I mean, I thought it all looked pretty awesome. So I sent an email off to the coach at the time, Andre Sneyman, and I got a reply within 12 hours basically saying, let's get your flight booked and get you over here. And here I am 7 years later and still here and loving it.
And just like every good expat, holding on to your accent. So, so you had some great years with Glendale and then the Colorado Raptors, a captain for some of that time. And then the Raptors left the league and you were left trying to find a team. Talk a little bit about what took you to LA and how you came to that decision.
Yeah, it was a very sad moment for when Colorado pulled out of the league. It had become my home, and we'd all of us players had become very familiar with it and become very comfortable there. And but then when one chapter closes, often another one opens, and I'm very lucky that the LA opportunity popped up, and I guess I'm also very lucky that the LA outfit's driven by a bunch of Australians. So I think I was lucky in that sense. And just when it was time to make a decision, I'd been talking with LA and the coach last year, Darren Coleman, and Stephen Hoyle, so the assistant, now head coach. And they didn't have to do too much convincing, because it was, within our first couple of convos, I was sold on their vision and the owner's vision for rugby moving forward, and for my rugby moving forward, and it just seemed like the best fit. And so far it's been pretty outstanding.
Right. I mean, obviously a great season last year, and in particular a great start. When you came in, did you get a sense that this team was something special from the start?
Absolutely. Without a doubt. It took a couple of days before I realized this is the most special thing I've ever been a part of. I'm not sure if you remember, but we were lucky enough to spend 5 weeks of last preseason in Hawaii, in Maui. And it ended up being the most special rugby tour or trip that I've ever been on. And yeah, as I said, it was very quick before I realized I was a part of something very, very special.
All right. So you go to Maui and it's like day 3. So what is it that makes it special? Because we've heard a lot about the Giltini culture, that like there was no team, right? So normally when you join a team has a culture. There was nothing there, so the teams had to create it. Or the players had to create it. So talk a little bit about what the players did to create it, and what were some of the feelings that you had about the team that made it special?
I think that one of the points that's driven, and it's definitely being driven this year, but it's always been driven by us, is being yourself, and being comfortable being yourself. And that's something that I think is very important, to be able to express yourself and not be able to hold back. And that's something our captain, Dave Dennis, he says that, if you're comfortable being yourself, then there's no worries that you have to have. And that's just what we do at LA, at the Giltinis, is everyone is themselves and has fun on and off the field. And when you're having fun on the field, you often have fun off the field. And it's just so many different. I think there was a plus side to not having a culture, being a brand new franchise and not having a culture. We were able to start one, and it's been successful, and it's a very fun place to be.
So let's talk about last year's season. You came out of the blocks, you literally just blew people away. I mean, it was at the start of the season, everyone was like, is this even going to be a competition? Do you think it was it the preseason that made the difference? Was it having those 5 weeks? You talked about it having it. I mean, I'm sure you've been on a lot of rugby tours, and let's be honest, in many cases, the tours that you go on are those intense moments, right, that really build teams. Mm. So were you guys just, when you got back from Maui, you were just looking for someone else to hit? It was just like, you just wanted to get, like hit someone else. You had enough of hitting each other.
Yeah. It was a combination of many things. I would put a lot of it down to, we had 5 solid weeks of prep, uninterrupted in Maui. And at the time, it was when lockdowns and restrictions through COVID were very prominent. And the reason why we went to Maui is because once we got there and had our 7 days of quarantine over with, we basically had free reign as to how we could interact as a team. We were on a horse paddock out in the middle of nowhere, but it was uninterrupted field time. And at the time, we were seeing New York posting, them scraping out a 10 by 10 meter patch of grass on their field, clearing the snow off it so they could run a couple of skills and drills. Whereas we were literally running full sessions every single day for 5 weeks. And then you mix that with the caliber of the coaches, the staff, and then the playing group as well. We were just far more prepared, I think, than any other team early in the season. Obviously, you see teams catch up as they see more film and are able to get their team established more. But I put it down to that preseason that we had and time together to get everything rolling was a key to success throughout. It led us through the whole season, really.
You you're obviously from Australia. You talked about the Australian flavor of the LA Giltinis, and you're playing with, two Wallaby greats, right? In Matt GITEAU and Adam Cooper. Did you ever think you'd be playing with those guys? Like you're probably a little bit younger than them, right? So
yeah,
that's probably someone you looked up to when you were a kid.
Well, I did. I grew up watching them, and I never ever thought that I'd be playing, on those fellas' team. And I feel very lucky and I guess blessed to be able to be in that position and learn from people who have done it at the top level for how long they've done it for. I've learned a lot from my teammates, and I don't know how Dave Dennis is going to feel about you saying there's 2 Wallaby greats. I reckon there's 3 on our team.
Fair enough, and potentially some future Wallaby greats as well. I mean, it's a pretty,
You'll be there one day. I reckon Billy Meeks needs to get called back up. Angus Cottrell, all of them could step into the Wallaby side very easily.
So we've talked about how you played for Glendale, right, and one of the best players there, and then you come into this really stacked LA Giltinis team. What was the greatest challenge that you had as a player last season?
Greatest challenge I've had as a player? I mean, not really. I guess maybe trying to balance, because I'm kind of a person that's we laugh about it too. I'm a bit of a hybrid in rugby. I play I can play second row and I can play front row and even back row. Just balancing between the positions and having, because I've had to cover front row and I've had to play second row. That's probably just been my biggest challenge, is just balancing it and making sure I'm always putting my best effort forward, and I think I do that. I think I put in my best effort to whatever I do, but that's probably been my biggest challenge, is just balancing between positional groups and sharing my time in training and doing personal extras. Splitting it between those 2 positional groups has probably been my biggest challenge. But other than that, I mean, everything that you do in rugby is challenging, and it should be. So, but yeah, nothing that's too hard that you can't do.
The Giltinis have something that not many teams in Major League Rugby have, and that's a world-class home stadium. And I was there for the final. And it does feel different. The grass is beautiful. The stadium has great sight lines. We were up top. We did the MLR Kickoff the day before the final, and you could see the LA skyline. It must be a nice opportunity to play at a historic American stadium and to bring rugby to it.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, and that all adds to the team culture. When you do things that are special, it grows the spirit within the team. And our owner, obviously, he's got the right idea. He wants to put us in a home that's special, that makes us feel special. And we definitely feel special when we get to play there, because it's an incredible stadium. I've been lucky enough to play when I was at the Raptors. They had the best facility in the league. And now being able to play at the Coliseum, which blows anything out of the park that I've played at before. We even got to have a run around on SoFi Stadium, which is next week's.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
next week's venue for the Super Bowl. We were the first ever team to play there with fans. It's we're very lucky to be able to play in the stadiums we've played in. So, and there's more and more stadiums popping up around the league. I think Houston have something going on really good with their stadium, and hopefully year by year there's more popping up, and team, Dallas have access to a great stadium this season, and hopefully that keeps growing.
So when you look back at 2021, Luke, what's one thing on the field that you'll remember 10 years ago? And it can't be winning. It can't be winning the championship. So one thing that happened on the field that you just remember, like a moment or an instance.
That I will remember in 10 years' time.
Yeah. Something that you'll tell your kids about. And then one thing off the field that you'll remember that you'll tell your kids about 10 years from now. When they say, "Daddy, did you?" When Major League Rugby's on the networks all the time, and you'll be like, "Hey, did you know I played in the very first LA Giltinis team?" And they'll be, "Tell us about that first year, Daddy." What are you going to tell them?
I think, when I got my first start with LA last year, I think it was maybe 3 minutes into the game, I was able to cross over for a try, and that was just such an exciting moment for me. To be able to touch down for my new team. That's the game. I think it's being played in the background there now against Seattle. But that's something I'll definitely remember and be able to and tell my daughter in 10 years' time and show her film back. And then the thing off the field that I'll probably most remember is I guess after the championship, we went to Las Vegas and celebrated. That was fun. But I think I've got to go back to that preseason camp in Maui. That was just such a memorable trip that I'll always hold close to me and always remember fondly.
Now, you're like you said, you came over to Colorado. You were here for many years, and your Januaries were normally like snow covered. I mean, I live in Colorado. There's snow out here. I mean, I guess in LA it's not snow covered. Like, which do you prefer, Luke? Which do you prefer?
It's definitely a bit easier to get the rugby training side of things done out here in LA. I will say, though, that I do miss the snow because being from Australia, snow's it's not a common thing. So I definitely do miss the snow, but it definitely don't miss it impacting our training. So, but it's nice out here. It's, sunny and 70 degrees every day, and we finish training and we go down the beach and so it's pretty nice conditions to have a professional rugby team.
And let's be honest, most Australians like to be by the beach because that's where most Australians live, right?
Yeah, that's pretty true. I'm pretty sure Matt GITEAU actually lives on the beach, like sleeps on the sand. I don't think he leaves.
He doesn't leave at first. So, well, Luke, thank you so much for your time today. Really excited last year to see you land on your feet, do so well with the LA Giltinis, and we look forward to watching you play again for the LA side.
Thanks, Pete. I really appreciate it, mate. It was great to chat with you.
There you go. Good man. Good family too. I'm sure you've spent some time with his dad and his mum. They've come over. They were over for the final. Got to hang out with them for a little bit there. Just love that family. Love that Luke has decided to stay in the US and really, devote time to his family and to his craft here.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, Luke's one of those guys that if any rugby team reached out to him and said, "Hey, can you give us a jersey? Can you come down and run a session for us?" Like, if Luke has he'll do it. Like he's one of those guys that's a real giver, and I'm so happy to see him land on his feet. I mean, he was the heart and soul of the Glendale team and then the Colorado team, and I think we heard it was hard for him, right? Colorado was his home for 8 years when he first came to the States, but sounds like the Giltinis last year was a really, really special experience for him, and I'm very happy that he landed on his feet.
Yeah, I didn't have the heart to tell Haas that it was actually him that sprayed the kid with champagne. I said it would tear up his contract. Just kidding. It wasn't Whitey. It was actually probably me. It was Stats Boy. I saw him in the corner with DC throwing the champagne everywhere. All right, let's go to our league preview. Our way too early predictions because we haven't even seen a roster yet, let alone a game. But Eastern Conference, we've got to roll through these pretty quickly here. Give me your Eastern Conference champion and give me a top three. We'll make it easy because they're going to the playoffs.
All right, so this is tough, right? Because there's been a lot of change, and for two of the top teams in Atlanta and NOLA, pretty late changes in terms of coaching staff, and that can have a bit of a challenge. NOLA obviously, promoted an assistant, and ATL did the same. But I think that's really tough. I'm going to go a little different here. I think New York, Toronto, and the Free Jacks. I think we're going to see a bit of a change in the playoffs. I think the latest changes that the late changes of the coaches, that's not easy, right? I mean, we've talked a lot, Dan, about how it takes really a couple of years to be able to install what you want. New York and Toronto have also Toronto and the Free Jacks have had some changes there, but I also like some of the additions that I've seen. So I mean, this is like a little bit of a shot in the dark. So you know, I could choose Atlanta, New York, and NOLA, and everyone would be like boring, right? So a lot of these teams don't have their foreign players. There's been lots of visa issues trying to get people in. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Don't win championships in January. You can lose them, but you don't win them.
Yeah, you don't win them. That's right. So I'm gonna, this is like one of these predictions, Dan, that if it works, I can point to it. If it doesn't work, I'll be like, yeah, it was preseason, right? Yeah. Like if it turns out, everyone's gonna think I'm a genius. So I'm just gonna go for it.
I'm not too different. I'll go New York, Toronto. I'll throw NOLA in there. They've got some guys coming back. They're going to have to stay healthy, though. I'm not really thinking on the depth side of things how they're stacked up with experience in depth because they've given up some of their foreign players that can provide some experience. They're very domestic orientated, which I love. That American pack in particular, I love. Obviously, got a lot of time for Fitzy as well as the GM down there. So they're building something special. And they need a breakthrough year. They need to get into the playoffs. It's, their OGs haven't tasted the playoffs yet. So I'll go them. Shifting focus to the West Coast, I'll go first because you did me a solid going first last time. LA will be in there again.
No way. That's such a brave prediction, Dan.
Thanks.
Man, that is really going for it. Just want to say, really putting out, pushing that boat out on that selection. LA, whew, man, I'm with you.
Just let me, apologies. I'm sorry for talking while you're interrupting there. My bad. I won't do it again. I will go Austin. The Gilgronis will push LA to the very limit this year, I think, in the West Coast. And San Diego to return to the playoffs. I think the San Diego Legion, if they can stay healthy, they're putting a lot of time and money into some older veteran players, Nonu, Robshaw, Peterson. If they can stay healthy, those three are healthy, San Diego will be in the mix at the back end of the year. Pete?
So I agree with you. I think the Giltinis is in. The rest of this conference, I think, is really, really interesting. I like the AGs. I'm with you with Austin. I think last year was a bit of a turnaround, right? So remember, Austin was like a doormat. And last year they were competitive, and all they were was just a little bit more of an explosive offense. They had a great defense. I think Austin will be good. I like that continuity. But outside of that, I mean, do we know what Houston's going to be? Right? Seattle showed some, well, I mean, I think, so the challenge with Utah is Utah are looking, I think, for more organic growth, right? But Houston have a lot of new players coming in. They have a new coach. Seattle, it's going to be the first time that Clarkey has a chance with a preseason. He showed, they had a real new coach bounce, right, last year when he came in. So I think the Western Conference, we might see the top three teams in MLR come out of the Western Conference. I think this conference has high quality top to bottom. I'm not sure that there's going to be a poor team out of the returning teams.
Interesting. All right, let's break down this weekend's game. Of course, things kick off February 5th. Haas mentioned it earlier this year, earlier than before, but it fits where we want to kick off. Obviously, COVID last year forced some changes. February 5th, this Saturday, things kick off in ATL. It's been a tumultuous off-season for Rugby ATL. They'll take on DC, who themselves are coming off an underperforming year. I think most people will agree that they did not live up to this hype that they had in that abbreviated 2020 season. Pete, give me your winner really quickly on this one.
I think ATL. DC have to show. ATL got a lot of the players that they came back. They're going to have a really solid foundation, even with the coaching turnover. I'm with you that DC hasn't shown their potential, so they have the chance to do that, but I want to see it before I pick them.
Okay, that game, 3 p.m. on the Rugby Network. Moving on, 7 p.m. on the Rugby Network, we welcome the Jackals to Major League Rugby. They will take on Austin, in-state rivalry. I'm not sure if this is a Texas Cup thing yet or not. Have we figured that out? We will this weekend. Pete, I'll go first. Austin at home. I am a little concerned for Dallas this year in terms of getting a tick in the winners' side of the bracket. And I don't think they'll find love in week one against a very, very sharp looking Gilgroni's outfit. So AG to get the win here.
Yeah, I'm with you, Dan. I just want to tell you a little story that kind of excited me. I have a client, Fortune 250 CEO that I'm doing work with, and he lives just outside Austin. And I reached out to him and I said, hey, I'm going to be in town doing some MLR commentating. You know, do you want to get together, have a coffee, you know, have breakfast or something like that? He goes, oh, are you doing the Austin game on Saturday night? I was like, how do you know that there's an Austin rugby game on Saturday night? So excited about Austin, that this, you know, this is a guy, is a, you know, senior executive for, you know, a very large brand name. And, you know, he knew Austin were playing on Saturday night. So Austin are doing some good things down there.
What does the brand rhyme with?
Not going there, man. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. There. Just checking. So you think Austin will win, though? Just your prediction?
Oh, yeah. Austin will win.
Yeah. Okay. No more Joe Rogan stories. Oh, I wasn't meant to say Joe Rogan. Sorry. Just kidding. It's Elon Musk. Just kidding. All right, moving on. Saturday night. It's all right for fighting. It's all right for footy as well. 2 games kicking off at the same time. LA, Houston on the Rugby Network. What are you thinking? This one.
So I'm calling this one, Dan. So I'm not going to make a prediction.
So I'm free of that burden this year.
I know, you are free of that burden. You can pick. So what I would say is, I think this might be one of the more intriguing games of the first round, because we're going to learn a lot about Houston, and Houston could be, like I said, one of the big dogs, one of the teams that really makes a step forward, and we'll find a lot about them in this game.
Yeah, they've got JT Onyet, who, hands down, probably the most handsome president in world rugby. The worst golfer, but the most handsome, and just an all-round great guy. I would have loved this game to be in about 6 or 7 weeks. I know they'll play each other again, but I don't think Houston have everyone in town yet.
Yeah.
We talked about those things with Huss, and it's going to be universal across the league. I think LA just have enough of their squad in town from last year to probably be a bit more consistent here. First game of the season, shortened preseason. Bang, I'll go LA down there. What are you thinking? Did you pick someone? Did you pick LA? Oh, you're calling it.
Okay, so I'm calling again.
Yeah, my bad. Okay, well, you can't call this one because it's the same time. New England at NOLA down at the Gold Mine.
Well, if I'm going to stick with my predictions, I'm going to go with New England. Although I love what NOLA's done down there in the Gold Mine. I think that stadium's going to be great. I'm sure that they've made some more steps forward on it, and they have been pretty good at home. I think this is, like, what I'll predict, Dan, is that this will be one of those grind outs that NOLA had. I know they've got some of their some more of their players that were either injured or not available last year back in that back line. But I think it's going to be I think it's going to be good. You know what? I'm going to say I think NOLA wins this game. I think New England, they have a disadvantage early on in the season in terms of training. NOLA's going to win this game, but New York will pip them into a playoff spot by the end of the year.
Man, I'm going for NOLA. NOLA as well. Just at home, fast track, a lot of snow in the northeast, probably doesn't help with the preparation. Right. All right, we've got 2 games Sunday. Utah at San Diego is the early game, 5 p.m. Eastern. That one's on the Rugby Network. What are you thinking here? You calling this one?
I'm not calling this one. I am calling the next one, Toronto, Seattle. So this one, I love this game. I think I'm going to give San Diego. I'm with you, Dan. I think San Diego early in the season, I think they'll have an advantage. They've got a lot of experience. The question is, can that experience hold throughout the season? So should they, when they're fresh and they're playing well, I think they're going to be difficult to handle for anyone, including the LA Giltinis. So I would say San Diego here early on, but I think I want to see what Utah look like. And they were good last year, but like I said, a lot of teams have made some really significant improvements. And, I think Utah are looking to grow maybe a little bit more organically.
Yeah, that's well said. I'm going to go San Diego as well. I know Martin Onu just got into town. Not sure if he'll be on the roster this weekend with the quick turnaround. You'd think if he's in shape, you get him out there, at least throw him on the bench to get him out there. I mean, if I was a Utah player and I don't see Martin Onu's name on the roster, I'm feeling a lot more confident getting on the plane going to San Diego than if he's on that roster. So even if a little bit of mind games from Danny Lee there. So the late game is Toronto, Seattle. You can't do that. I just don't know. Is it 2019 Seattle that shows up, or is it 2019 Toronto that shows up, or what? We played that great semi-final there in 2019 between these two sides. Toronto 2020 and beat them bad at home. They smashed that with Sammy Malcolm just kicking points from every part of the field. And he's back. He'll start at 10, you would imagine, for the Arrows this weekend, or at 15. And I just think Toronto here, again, I want to pick Seattle because there's nothing better than Starfire, especially, 7 o'clock their time on a Sunday night. It'll be packed and it'll be a great time. No better place to watch rugby than Starfire when that place is rocking. But I think Toronto, again, just through the consistency, these early season games, it all comes down to familiarity and consistency of your methods, and I think that's probably going to suit Toronto more here. But Seattle could surprise some teams this year for sure.
I like Seattle. I like what Clarkey did last year. I think he made some pretty strong choices. Obviously, identified some additional players that really had an impact. I think Seattle are going to pull this off. I think it's hard. It's a long trip for Toronto. I think that they're another one of these teams that it's cold up there. It's I think there's definitely a disadvantage. Seattle. Hey, it's cold and wet, but it's not snowing. And so I'm actually going to go, just to get a little flavor on this, Dan. I think Seattle will pull this one out.
You're calling this game. You're not allowed to pick teams.
Oh, that's right. I'm not allowed to pick team. It's going to be a tie.
You're fired. Week 1. Didn't even get a game done. Which all right, we usually we in the past we've done the national game as game of the week, but let's just do what's your game of the week? Which one are you looking forward to the most?
There's a lot of great games, but I'm really looking forward to LA Houston and then Utah San Diego. Those are two games I'm not calling, right? So I get to enjoy them and watch them just as a fan. But I think both of those games will tell us a lot about what the season looks like in the West.
I'm going to go Toronto, Seattle. 3 reasons. I think it's one of the great early rivalries that we've had, just from circumstance. They've played some absolute classics against each other. I love Seattle when it gets crowded and big up there, and they'll pack it out. It's just great to watch on television. It was great to call in person when we were there. And 3, I get to listen to you. So that's 3 great reasons for that one to be my game of the week. There you go. Don't mess up. I'm just going to be texting you the entire time.
I know. No, don't worry. I'll have it. I'll be there. Any advice you can give me, Dan, I will take. I'll even if you give me a good nugget, I'll even give you a shout out. A shout out.
No, it's like the old Viking days. I'm on my ship. I'm out to sea. Just shoot the arrow. Let me burn. Free my spirit. It's going to be great. Well, Pete, pleasure as always. Thanks for joining us. It's going to be an absolute great weekend. It's so exciting that Major League Rugby is back. In a big way. 2022 is shaping up to be a massive year. We're going to have everything you need throughout the season here on MLR Kickoff. It's going to be a great time. For Pete Steinberg, the Professor, Aaron Castro, Brian Ginty, I'm Dan Power. This has been the MLR Kickoff.